Okay, welcome to the online lesson today. We'll be talking about three things. First, we'll be talking about answering questions, yes/no questions or negative questions. We'll also be talking about different levels of formality, different styles of speech, which is such an important feature of Korean language. And later, I'm going to give you a few ideas about spacing and some simple rules of spacing we can use. Okay, let's have a look first at yes/no questions and negative questions. If you were to answer a Korean question with the answer yes or no, you do it just as you would in English. So for example, if someone were to ask you, 배고파요? 배고파요? Are you hungry? And you'll notice I've written two different spacings for this. I'm sorry it's a bit confusing, but in the book they use 배 space 고파요, but 배고파요 is often used as often written as just one word. 배고파요? Are you hungry? If you were to answer affirmatively, yes, you just say 네, 배고파요. Yes, I'm hungry. And no, 아니요, 배 안 고파요. No, I'm not hungry. So it's just the same as in English if you're answering that type of question. Where it gets different is when the question is negative. So when the question's negative in Korean, you use the Korean word for yes to agree with the negativeness, and the Korean word for no to disagree with the negativeness. So this is the opposite from the English. In the English, we might have something like this. Aren't you hungry? No, I'm not hungry. I ate before. Aren't you hungry? Yes, I'm really hungry. I ate 10 hours ago. But in Korean, you'll have the opposite happening. 배 안 고파? 배 안 고파. So here's agreement. Yes, I'm not hungry. So here the yes is agreeing with the negativeness of the sentence. But if you were to say 배 안 고파? 아니, 배고파. Here you're contradicting. So no, I'm hungry. It sounds a bit strange in English, but here you're contradicting, you're disagreeing with the negative words of the question. If you just want to do it very simply, so if someone says to you, 배 안 고파? You can just say, 배 안 고파. You don't have to say or 아니. You don't have to put that in there, or you can say, so it's just like saying, I'm not hungry. Okay, now try the exercises on Moodle which go along with this part of the lecture. Okay, let's move on now to talk about different styles of speech. This is extremely important in learning Korean, and Korean is really characterized by a very sort of complex system of social styles, not just in South Korea, but also amongst the Korean diaspora and also in North Korea, although it's slightly different in North Korea. Really, it's impossible to speak any kind of Korean without being involved in some kind of system of honorifics. And I guess in some ways you could argue that in English we have a similar phenomenon. Of course, we use different speaking styles to suit the social setting, and some speaking styles are inappropriate in different settings. For example, sometimes we might say, "Pardon me, sir." For example, this could be a waiter or addressing a customer in a restaurant. In other situations, we might use in English, "Oi, you!" for example. Now, of course, if you were about to warn someone who might be stealing something, a thief, or maybe warn someone who is about to have an accident. You probably wouldn't, in the accident situation, you probably wouldn't say, "Pardon me, sir," and if you were addressing a thief, you probably wouldn't say that. And in a restaurant, a waiter probably would get into trouble if he said to a customer, "Oi, you!" for example. So we have a similar situation in Korean, but what makes it much more complex in Korean is the speaking styles appear to be much more formally codified than they are in English and in other languages. And Koreans learn at a very early age which is the correct or which is an appropriate speaking style to use. Now, of course, if you're learning the Korean language outside Korea, this can be quite difficult to get the hang of, these different speaking styles. What you could do if you're learning outside Korea is to observe TV dramas and films and how they speak to each other. But understand these are also fictional events. They're not always a good model. But when you go to Korea, you'll learn very, very fast, or you'll get a good sense of the different speaking styles that are used. Now, of course, one final point is Koreans will give you a break as you are a non-native speaker of Korean, and they'll realise that you will make mistakes with this. You'll speak inappropriately at times. They might find it very funny, but really you should make a real effort to bear this in mind, and don't neglect one form or one style of speech. Don't neglect honorifics, because sometimes you may have to speak to older people. Don't neglect the casual form, because if you speak to a close friend in honorifics, it sounds inappropriate. Now, usually the different styles of speech are indicated by the verb endings and also adjective endings, but also different words are used, just like in English or other languages, for different situations to indicate different levels of formality. Let's have a look at some of these endings, though. Now, in the textbook, you're going to come across many different forms of many different styles. But you'll particularly see the polite form, for example, 커피 좋아해요? 네, 커피 좋아해요. Do you like coffee? Yes, I like coffee. Now, this is basically a safe form to use at first when you speak maybe informally to people you don't know so well, who you judge or you believe are probably of a similar status to you, for example, similar age, for example, similar year at school or at university, for example, until you get to know them a bit better. But also, one of the great things about this book is it really teaches the casual form very early. And this is the form you're going to hear in TV dramas. And this is used by adults to children, for example, or adults to students, but also by kids to parents often. And it's also used between adults or children who are very close, and they've established that they are sort of close with each other. So it's not used necessarily in a bad way, but it's used to show proximity, social, cultural proximity, but also proximity in terms of you liking someone and being in this way. So the casual forms, for example, 커피 좋아해? 좋아해. 아니, 안 좋아해. So do you like coffee? Yeah, I like coffee. Yeah. But there's also the more formal form, the longer form, 커피 좋아합니까? 네, 좋아합니다. For example, and this is often used by in different parts of the country, of course. I've been told that in Busan, generally adult men tend to use this instead of the yo form. But there's also the honorific form, and this is something you will say to people who are much, much older than you, your grandparents, your teacher, your professor, 커피 좋아하세요? Or 커피 좋아하십니까? For example. Okay, so let's have a look now at intonation in yes-no questions, and also responses to yes-no questions in the polite and in the casual form. So basically, statements have falling intonation, generally speaking. So, 저 커피 좋아해요. I like coffee. If you were to turn that into a question, it'd just be rising intonation. 커피 좋아해요? Do you like coffee? 커피 좋아해요? Do you like coffee? And if you were to reply to that, yes, in the polite form, you just say, 네, 좋아해요. Or, 아니요, 안 좋아해요. But if it was casual, you'd probably just say, 좋아해. Or, 좋아해. 커피 좋아해? 아니, 안 좋아해. 싫어. 싫어해. 싫어해, for example.